Hey guys, it's Will Hepburn Photography. I just want to do a quick little tutorial showing y'all how to walk through Lightroom, and kind of wanted to use one of my images as an example. So I wanted to start off actually showing you how the edited image looks as it is, and then the before image. So this is essentially what the image looked like in the camera with my lighting, and I had made the necessary adjustments to it over here in these little side modules. So that's really what I want to talk to you guys about today. Is I actually wanted to go over how to achieve this type of image, or how I would normally go about achieving this image. So what I like to do is I like to start off over here, usually have it already automatically selected to color. Right here you have your eyedropper. I typically don't use this very often, but it's basically a good indicator of your white balance in the image. So say you could take this dropper, you could go over to the white area of the eye, and you can click the mouse, and it'll automatically kind of select a white balance for you. Uh, what I typically like to do in my camera is I actually like to set it to an auto white balance. So I will just select as shot. You do have all these different options if you decide you just want to experiment and see what it does to the image, but I prefer to keep it as shot. The temperature, this will actually either make your image cooler by bringing it to the left, or if you want to bring it to the right, it's actually going to warm the image up. With tint, it's actually going to drag it over. So say this is kind of more of the green spectrum, it's going to bring more of a green tint to your image. If you drag it over here, it's going to make it more of a purple tint. So for example, with the temperature, I'll just bring this down, and you can actually see that it's cooling it off. It's making it have more of a blue tone, and this is kind of where it was before. It's kind of a good in between of a cool tone and a warm tone. With exposure, uh, what I would normally do when I'm shooting is actually typically will shoot underexposed. So much of the time I will actually have to boost my exposure up in Lightroom just to make it look right, to not make it look so dark. Contrast is actually going to add more definition the more that you pump it up, or the more you take it away, it's going to give the image, less definition. So let me kind of show you what I'm talking about. So if you bring it out, it's kind of going to make the colors look more faded out, whereas I feel like if you bring more contrast into the image, it's going to bring more definition, more pop, more dimension to the image. Highlights, a good example of when you would adjust highlights. Oftentimes, highlights will affect the skin depending on the lighting. Say for an image that you would take, I guess, out in a field, for example. If it's a really sunshiny day and it's the sun's just like really bright beaming in the background, you can actually take the highlight down, and it's going to bring a lot of that brightness out of the image. Shadows, as you can tell from the before image, I brought the shadows way up. So say if you bring the shadows down, I feel like it's just harder to see the details in the hair. So I would just boost those shadows back up, so you can see more of the hair color. It's not gonna make everything dark and shadowy. Whites and blacks, that's pretty self-explanatory. If you want less white or more white, less black, more black in the image, then you would adjust those accordingly. Clarity, if you wanted to soften the skin of your subject, so say, let's zoom in a little bit closer, and you'll notice as I bring it down, you're making the face very, very soft. You're taking a lot of the texture out of the skin. Some people like this desired effect, but I just feel like it really, the colors get faded, and you're losing a lot of that texture in the skin. So I would just bring it right back up, right around here, probably right around 0. Vibrance, this is actually going to control how vibrant you want the colors in the image. Saturation will actually deal more with the colors in the skin if you're wanting to achieve more of a red skin tone or an orange skin tone, or maybe you're not wanting as much of like a pink or a peach color to the skin. If you're wanting more of I'd say more of like a pale color to your image, to the skin tones, then you would bring the saturation down. So it's almost kind of like when we were, messing around with a temperature. You can actually adjust that down, and you're, going to get either warmer tones to the skin, or you're going to get cooler tones to the skin. Right here we have the tone curve. So this is essentially just giving you more control over the highlights, lights, darks, and shadows. So if you wanted to kind of do some more deep editing, you can do that. I will typically just adjust these little sliders. A lot of times people will actually select certain points on the tone curve, and they'll adjust according to that. So it really just comes down to your preference as far as the tone curve goes, if I can talk today. So anyway, we're going down here to the module where we actually have Hsl color and black and white. I typically don't do much adjusting to this unless I absolutely have to. This is kind of more so if the skin tone is off and you're wanting to kind of bring more color or more of a natural feel to it, or a desired feel. You can adjust these, kind of have less red, more red. You've got orange, yellow, you've got your blues, your purples, your magentas. So you can control the hue of it, the saturation, and the luminance. So my best advice would be to just experiment and just see what you think, looks best. Split toning. This is a good way to color grade your image. So say if you are wanting to go for a desired effect, you're kind of wanting to mix some orange with some blue, or some red with some yellow. You can get really creative and give your image a lot of different tones, and kind of, it kind of in a way affects the coolness or the warmness of the image, and just kind of allows you to experiment. Detail, we talked about this in a previous video. If you were wanting to sharpen the image, so say you took the picture and you may have gotten like a little bit of motion blur from the way that you were taking the image, you can actually sharpen the image and make your image look a lot more sharp. So what you need to know about sharpening is that when you sharpen the image and bring up the amount on it, you actually have to be sure that you realize that the noise is going to go up the image as well. So what you want to do is you want to bring up the noise reduction even more, to the point where you're not seeing a lot of that grain in the image. Lens correction, I always like to select where it says remove chromatic aberration, and also have it checked where it says enable profile corrections. This is kind of what Lightroom will do to basically fix maybe, any kind of imperfections in your lens from whenever you were shooting. So it will just basically polish and improve upon your lens and how it was shot. So under lens profile, You will typically want to make sure that you have the right brand of lens selected, and under model you want to make sure it's the right focal length. So for example, with this image, I took the image with a Canon 85 millimeter 1.8. So I made sure to be sure that I had all of this correct information in here so it would know the right way to fix everything for the image. And you'll notice pretty much immediately once you check on those boxes, it really does improve the image. Transform. This is really cool because whenever you turn it off, this is originally how the shot was. It was kind of crooked, so I essentially went over to level and I was able to fix it. It was able to straighten it out for me. Another easy way to go about this is go up to this little rectangular box. It's called crop overlay, and you can actually make adjustments from here too. So say if you needed to get the horizon line straighter and you wanted to fix it that way, you can do the manual adjustment, or you can just press this little level button. It'll automatically fix all of that for you. Under effects, this is your vignette. So if you go to the left, you're going to get more of a dark vignette around your model. This can be sometimes useful if you have a scenario where maybe there's some distracting things in the image and you're wanting to draw more attention to the model, and just kind of get everybody's focus away from everything that's going on around the model. But typically, I personally, I like it maybe a little bit dark around the edges, but I will typically like it somewhere in between the dark and the light. Because if you bring up the amount on the slider, you'll notice that you'll get these kind of little white little areas around the outside of the picture. And to me, that's just not very flattering. The midpoint, roundness, feather, all of this will add different dimensions to your vignette. So if you're wanting to just do additional, parameter changes to the vignette, this kind of just gives you some different options. Grain, you can actually, some people will make it kind of give it a more image of, I'd say the image would be more of a vintage look. So what you would do is you would just raise this up, and if you zoom in, you'll start to see more of the grain. So some people will do this as more of like an artistic type of effect on the image, but personally, I prefer there to be zero grain, unless I'm just, I'm in a certain kind of artsy mood and I just want to add grain for whatever reason. Then the last little module you have down here is camera calibration. I'll usually keep it set to 2012 current, depending on what version of Lightroom you have. And then you have camera neutral, which I like, but you can actually change the profile. So say if you don't like that and you just wanted to kind of mess around with what kind of looks you can get from the profiles, and then you can make additional adjustments as well, through these different sliders, and whatever you're wanting to achieve, and however you're wanting your image to look. Alright guys, so that's basically just a little walkthrough of Lightroom. I tried to cram as much as I could, because if I tried to really take my time with every little thing, every little tool, it would take me probably about an hour and a half or more. So I just wanted to kind of help y'all get your feet wet and not be intimidated by Lightroom. It's all a learning process, and you just have to make yourself get in there and do trial and error and find out what looks best to you and what doesn't look, the best to you. So anyway, please check me out on Instagram, Will Hepburn Photography. My website, willhepburnphotography.com. I actually just updated it with a lot of my updated work that I've done over the past year or so. And also, check me out Facebook. I've got plenty of my work on Facebook as well. So feel free to like, share, subscribe, comment on this video. Just let me know how you're liking it. Let me know if y'all have any questions, anything that I can help you guys out with. I'd love to be able to help y'all out and learn about lighting and Lightroom and shooting with your camera and just any questions that you might have. So anyway, I hope you guys have a great rest of your evening, and I will talk to y'all soon.